What's up, motocross action? Welcome to another episode of Shaken Not Stirred. Today we have a special treat for you. We have a 500cc project bike shootout. There's not one manufacturer on planet Earth that still produces a 500cc two-stroke engine that is meant to be shoehorned into a dirt bike chassis. And there's good reason. If you haven't ridden a 500cc smoker before, don't start now, unless you need a quick shot of adrenaline to jumpstart your heart. But we do know two groups of guys who are 500cc two-stroke crazy. Maybe they're stuck in the 1990s, or maybe they have a few screws loose. Whatever the case, MXA is glad they have such a passion for these archaic engines that they insisted on building us two exotic 500cc smokers, both in 2016 KTM 250 SXF chassis. The kicker, one is powered by a Honda CR500 engine, and the other a Kx500 engine. Adam Millar of Millar Racing in Canada is a die-hard CR500 guy, and you can guess which bike he built. The second group of 500 loonies are Kx500 aficionados who call themselves Kxq Racing. You'd think that they would share a common bond, but instead they have a love-hate relationship. They both think they know which antiquated engine is better than the other and who can build the best version of a modern 500cc motocross bike. This is where MXA came into the picture. They asked the MXA wrecking crew to settle the argument in a classic 500cc build-off. Choosing to utilize the same 2016 KTM 250F rolling chassis, both teams had to cut out the cradle of the frames so the 500cc engine of their choice could be shoehorned in. Amazingly, both Millar Racing Engineering and Kxq Racing found 2007 KTM 450 SXF frames. It wasn't an easy task. The frame rails had to be fit perfectly in the donor frame and be welded with precision to ensure all the dimensions were perfect. Kxq Racing Ktx 500E had some serious wow factor with the electric start, as the Panthera Motorsports KX500 electric starter kit sounded like one of those high-powered NASCAR engine tire guns when we pressed the button. We first met the Kxq Racing gang a few years ago when we tested Sean Collier's KX500, and now they named this engine on the KTX 500E the Sean Collier Stage 3 engine. Everything about this machine was custom, and they even had their 500cc build-off competitor Adam Millar build them a custom head for the KX500 that used KTM radiator hose fittings and rechambered it to Kxq's racing specifications. Adam also installed a trick decompression release in the head. In an effort to keep weight down, as they already added 13 pounds with the electric starter, battery, and supporting hardware, just about every bolt they used was titanium except for a few high-stress areas. Anyone who's raced open bike knows that the 500cc two-stroke engines can be rattle traps, and to reduce vibration they use Fast Company flex bars and impact pegs. So what was the KTX 500E like to ride? This beast produced 72 horsepower on the dyno, and yes, we felt every bit of it on the track. But luckily it was easy to ride because it didn't have the short power band nature that an old school 500 two-stroke has. The KTM chassis and Öhlins suspension made a great combination. However, we could feel the extra weight of the Kawasaki KTX 500E with the electric start. The Öhlins forks and shock worked well together as the forks held up higher in their stroke and had lots of room for absorbing bumps. The shock was close to perfect as you can get. Test riders did notice some vibration, but it wasn't as bad as the 500cc two-strokes of the past. We figured out how to manage it. Also, another issue was that the shifting was very stiff. We had to really think about making this shift. The power of the engine would make the shifter bind, but with a little forethought, you could get the job done. The next bike is a KTR500. The Honda KTR500 was the creation of Canada's Adam Millar of Millar Racing Engineering. Even though MRE built us a CR500 power plant, his business is based on building and modifying both KX500 and CR500 engines. With the CR500 he built for us, he made internal modifications to the crankcases, cylinder, and head. He used an OEM crankshaft that was in excellent condition and refurbished it himself. He also added his signature decompression release in the head to make the engine start easier. TSR Products built the engine cases for both our CR500 and KX500 project bikes out of 6061 billet, as well as the stator and clutch access covers for the CR500. These billet cases were designed with an updated clutch lifter system that eliminates the cable lever actuator and mounts an integral high hydraulic clutch slave cylinder for a light and smooth action. A standard FMF Honda CR500 pipe and Power Core 2 silencer were used for this build. Only the silencer mounting points had to be modified, so it was a simpler way to go than the custom KX500 exhaust that we saw on the KTX 500E. Adam kept the WP 4CS components from 2016 KTM 250S XF chassis, but he sent them to Pro Action Canada, who swapped out the horrible 4CS internals with Kiaba SSS internals and added a Pro Action reservoir to the WP shock. To also minimize vibration, Adam called on some trick components like XC gear spurs, foot pegs, and Mako 63 bar mounts. Last on the list for reducing vibration were Necken's reduced diameter SFH bars that allowed for 4mm thicker grips. Riding the KTR 500 was completely different from the KX 500 engine. Even though many major components were the same, such as the chassis, it was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, with the Honda KTR 500 being the good doctor and the Kawasaki KTX 500E being his dark inner self. The Honda CR500 was a tame version of the Kawasaki KX 500 build. It didn't lash out, it wasn't scary when the throttle was at the stops, it was calm and collected. It didn't tremor when the engine built its power, as it offered a low to mid style of power. MXA test riders could click up to third and just leave it there. It pulled out of corners with delight. It got power to the ground without the front wheel coming up. Every test rider loved this engine as it was more usable, not more powerful, just more likely to put power to the ground. Unlike the Kawasaki KTX 500E, there was no wow factor with the Honda KTR 500. Handling was a strong suit on the KTR 500, as it handled as well or better than any production bike from back in the day. It was a little soft for our faster test riders, but for the average guy, this chassis and suspension setup was a dream. Remember, both the Kawasaki and Honda share the same chassis, so the overall improvement in Honda's handling is primarily due to the power delivery, suspension, and weight. There were many good things that MXA test riders had to say about this bike, but the most talked about was the lack of vibration. There simply was none. Now for the shootout, KTX 500E versus KTR 500 two-stroke. This isn't a case of evil versus good, just two very different personalities with both having their pluses and minuses. To decipher which one is superior is just about impossible unless we are basing the results on what one person would like more than another, but even that is hard. No one looks forward to kickstarting a 500cc two-stroke engine in an electric start world, even though the KX 500 engine gained significant weight from the electric starter, which was felt on the track. We still absolutely loved having the push-button starter, especially when we were watching the other tester try to execute the perfect kick to turn over the CR500 power plant. No one builds an expensive 500cc dirt bike to not have the most power possible. Half of the thrill of building the bike is seeing the massive dyno numbers on paper. And we have to say that the power of the Kawasaki KTX 500E took our breath away. It was fast, scary fast. But that's the part of the appeal of a 500cc two-stroke. The Honda KTR 500 handled best for the average rider, and we aren't surprised. Every serious motocross racer from the old days told us up front that the KX 500 had a better engine, but everyone hated the cumbersome chassis. While the Honda CR500 power band wasn't as good, but the CR handled and felt better, which is why every MXA test rider chose to race the Honda over the Kawasaki KX500 back in the day. Those sentiments still hold true. The Honda KTR 500 was tuned with precision. The Pro Action tuned suspension was plush and consistent, and the smooth style of power aided the superb handling. On the other hand, the Kawasaki KTX 500E seemed to suit our faster testers. The suspension held up better in the stroke, it was tailored for high-speed racing, whereas the Honda KTR 500 was was a bike that offered more comfort and confidence. The CR500 engine was as smooth as they get. It was calm yet powerful, and you felt zero vibration in your hands. While the Kx500 engine roared with authority, it offered more power over a longer period of time than the CR500 engine. Although it was easy to manage the power, it did have a wicked side. It was eye-watering fast and at times too much for mere mortals. When it comes down to the shootout results, both bikes had their own style and purpose, which is why it is impossible to choose a winner across the board. While the Kawasaki KTX 500E is the power king, the KTR 500 takes the handling crown. These bikes have the same bones, yet two distinctly different personalities, which is why this is a true test between Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. If you haven't seen the individual bike test videos on these two 500cc two-strokes, click the thumbnails below to get the full in-depth review on these bikes. And to stay up to date with the latest news, reviews, bike tests, results, check out motocrossactionmag.com